found guilty of tax fraud. Former CFO Alan Weisselberg pleaded guilty over the summer for his involvement in the scheme. He testified last month that the Trump organization was aware of the fraud. The former president, Donald Trump, is not charged in this case, but prosecutors did say during closing arguments that he had knowledge of the wrongdoings. And, of course, our minds are in Georgia. The Peach State saw record early voter turnout ahead of Election Day for the tight match between Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker. For more, let's bring in Nicole Killian and Major Garrett. Nicole is CBS News congressional correspondent joining us from Atlanta. She's been following this election for months. And Major, of course, our Chief Washington correspondent. You were Chief White House correspondent here with me on set. Nicole, good to see you on what may be your penultimate day in Georgia, at least for a while. Let's sort of start with exactly what the two candidates are saying here on the final day as they try to reach voters.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're really just putting it all on the line, leaving it all on the field, if you will. And sorry to use some of those cliches, but this has been a long slog for both candidates. And at this point, the candidates and voters, I think, are just ready to get to the point where this race is over and decided. And so both candidates, of course, made a last-minute appeal to voters today, with Herschel Walker making a stop at a few local diners and Senator Warnock trying to thank and pump up some of his campaign volunteers. Hear how both of these candidates see this final day of campaigning and their chances for tonight.
But I got a feeling that the people of Georgia are going to get this right. Yes. And we're going to get this done one more time.
I feel very good about the outcome. I think the early vote was good, and so now I think we're going to win this election. Herschel Walker is going to be your senator, and we're going to get things changed.
I think it's worth noting that only about 35,000 votes separated these two candidates in the general election. And a lot of folks think that this race could be just as close. Again, it really is going to come down to turnout. And as you can see behind me, Ed, pretty cloudy. At least it's not raining. It was earlier today, but that was certainly a concern of both campaigns, who tried to very forcefully tell voters not to let that deter them.
And the voters of Georgia know this. The voters of America may realize it as well. Democrats have 50 seats in the Senate right now. They could break ties with the vice president. They obviously would like a 51st. We'll talk about why that's important. But Democrats there in the state, Nicole, and across the country, obviously monitoring this quite closely and hopeful that they're able to pad their majority by at least one seat.
Yeah, that's right. And certainly while this won't change control in the U.S. Senate, it will affect which party has more influence, if you will. Of course, if Democrats are able to pick up that 51st seat, that does allow them to do more in terms of trying to carry out their agenda and the president's agenda, whether that's things like confirming judicial nominations and the like. As far as Republicans are concerned, even though they can't secure the majority at this point, that 50-50 split to them is critical, because they feel that can be a system of checks and balances on the Biden agenda. And certainly that's been the argument that Herschel Walker has been making. I did have a chance to speak to a key surrogate for Senator Warnock, his fellow Georgia Senator John Ossoff, about why Georgia still matters. Why does Georgia still matter?
Well, look, Georgia is everything to me. Georgia is the most important obligation that I have, serving this state. And putting aside even the national balance of power, national politics, it matters deeply to me and to every Georgian who represents us for the next 6 years in the U.S. Senate. And the contrast between Senator Warnock and his opponent in character, in competence, in integrity is as vast as I've ever seen.
So the outcome will certainly have implications not only for the state of Georgia, but again, for the U.S. Senate, and in terms of how they carry out their business.
And for how Washington will carry out its business. And for that, Major, both Democrats and Republicans sort of sit in suspense, waiting to see the results. And it may eventually come Wednesday, if we know the results, allow this town to finally button up things for the year and get a sense of where things are headed into 2024.
And put a verdict on what the midterms actually meant.
Right.
And this is a mini referendum on the value or lack thereof of a Trump endorsement. And if Herschel Walker, and trust me, Republicans you've talked to and I've talked to are not optimistic about this. They know it's going to take a tremendous amount of day of turnout to push Herschel Walker over the finish line. Not impossible, but they're not counting on it. But if that happens, it will be because not of former President Trump, but Brian Kemp, the sitting governor, who Herschel Walker never endorsed, but who has campaigned aggressively for him during the runoff to sort of patch up their differences. So it will be someone who ran well ahead of Herschel Walker in the general election, pulling him across, even though he was demonized by the former president, not once, but twice this calendar year.
Right.
It would be indicative of what is the new dimension of Trumpism within the Republican Party. And in Washington, if Raphael Warnock wins, the number difference won't be nearly as important as the psychological difference. It will be a pushback on Republicans who will have a narrow majority in the House, a larger majority for Democrats in the Senate, in a sense of we won more than we lost by a long shot in this midterm, which is not where they were expecting to be when they looked at this midterm 6 weeks before it happened.
And that they may have recruited a stronger class of candidates.
Yes.
Who had appeal across these big states. While we have you, of course, this Trump organization guilty verdict today in New York, perhaps not entirely unanticipated, but certainly has political implications for the former president, even though, again, we'll point this out, he was not charged, he was not legally in focus during this trial.
He was not legally in focus, but he's implicated. Alan Weisselberg made it very clear during the trial, and everyone who knows anything about how the Trump organization functioned knows that Alan Weisselberg got final sign-off from everything that was important from Donald Trump. One of the very few people in Trump's world who could call him Donald. Why? Because he first worked for Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father. That's how deeply embedded he was in the Trump family and the Trump family businesses. So Weisselberg didn't do things without approval at the top. That approval at the top is implicated in these guilty verdicts. It's always been known in business circles in New York, don't mess with New York taxes. Do not do that because they will come after you eventually. The last most important part of this politically is the former president has left an aura of, you can't get me, I'm the former president. This accountability now says, well, in one case, it can be done.
Right. Even if it's not you.
Even if it's not you, it's you by implication.
Right.
And he's always said, there's me and my brand, and they're pretty closely aligned.
Absolutely. And we still have, of course, ongoing investigations into January 6th. Mm-hmm. We have the New York Attorney General considering various things.
We have Fulton County, Georgia.
Fulton County, Georgia, where Nicole is. And then we have whatever else the special counsel may ultimately decide.
And we have news on the special counsel front today with subpoenas in several battleground states for the communications at the local level between county election officials and the Trump organization about the entire question of alternate election slates. Did they try to do something to change or alter or overturn the 2020 election? That's a significant development as well.
And we're talking about Scott in a little bit. But step back to the Republicans you talked to. If at the end of today, the company run by the former president with his name on it has been found guilty of tax charges, and the candidate backed by and handpicked by that former president loses a major runoff election in a swing state, many Republicans will sit back and go, how do we shake ourselves of him? And yet, it'll be very hard to do so.
Well, it begins with trying to do that. You have to have the fortitude and the willingness to say, we are, and I'm going to advocate for the shaking off of the Trump effect within the Republican Party. What we've seen since the midterm is a willingness to conceptualize that, but not give it full rhetorical backing, meaning I'm better for this party than he is. People say, I'm questioning his role or how good he is or what our results were, but you need to take it to the next level. And until Republicans find whatever it is in their stomach that's currently lacking to do so, Trump remains not only the party leader, but the odds-on favorite to claim the nomination, because you can't say he can't be the nominee without saying who and why.
Yeah. Well, Major Garrett and Nicole Killian tracking this down in Atlanta. Nicole will be talking throughout the evening as we will have a special edition of Red and Blue later tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern with the latest Georgia vote count from our CBS News data desk. Nicole and others will be joining us for that, and we hope you'll join us. The Justice Department takes significant action in its investigation into interference into the 2020 election. We're diving into new subpoenas as investigators take a closer look at what happened in key battleground states after the break. You're streaming Red and Blue on Runoff Day, reporting across the political divide.
Original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became a sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When weather turns extreme.
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
Every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
Oh! You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
CBS mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go!
CBS mornings, starting at 7. Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe. New subpoenas from the Justice Department are making waves on Capitol Hill. The department's newly named special counsel, Jack Smith, issued the first known subpoenas as part of its investigations into attempts to overturn the 2020 election. DOJ is looking to speak with elections officials in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and all have signaled their willingness to comply. And on the Hill, Chairman Benny Thompson says his January 6 House Select Committee will make criminal referrals to the Justice Department. That announcement ends months of speculation over what the panel plans to do with its findings and comes as Congress spent part of today honoring the officers who defended the Capitol on that fateful day in 2021. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland joins me now. One of those busy ones, Scott. Let's begin with the January 6 criminal referrals and Congressman Thompson confirming what many had anticipated, but giving a sense that there is something more coming very soon.
Yeah, the chairman says they expect to issue these referrals or referral, but he didn't answer the question that we asked, a few dozen times. Against whom? And exactly when? That really is the bottom line. And at this point, not only is the committee not saying, the chairman's not saying. There's a firm deadline that is staring this committee right in the face. They have to get all of this done. Any criminal referrals and its final written report and any further public hearings by January 2nd. This committee will be shut down at the end of January 2nd as the new Congress comes in. Republicans have been unequivocal about that. So there's a deadline and there's a possibility of referrals. But I'll underscore this, Ed, because it's worth reaffirming each time we talk about the referrals. They would be advisory. They're recommendations, not binding on the U.S. Justice Department, but they come with a certain amount of heft. This committee has amassed credibility and amassed quite a few interviews, hundreds of them, in its 18-month investigation.
And, I mean, part of the issue with referral versus referrals, I think other members of the committee were asked today, could it involve the former president? Would it involve lawyers or former Justice Department officials? And they're giving no sense of that, as they were planning to meet today to try to make up the decision on what exactly to do or who exactly to refer, right?
They have played fast and loose with projected timetables. They have gone past certain self-imposed deadlines. So when they say a certain day will come certain announcements, we take that with a little bit of flexibility. They have flouted deadlines. They have pushed back their own deadlines, but they're also in uncharted waters. This is an unprecedented congressional committee doing unprecedented things. There's no past study to review to fine and firm up deadlines.
And, of course, they're doing all this amid all the other year-end work that has to be done. And an emotional event today in the rotunda of the Capitol as congressional leaders bestowed the Congressional Gold Medal on police officers that responded to that insurrection on January 6, 2021.
This is a distinctive honor. It's rarely given out, only a few dozen times in U.S. history. The Congress, by formal legislation and the president's signature, agreed to give congressional gold medals to the D.C. Police Department and the U.S. Capitol Police Department for their heroics in saving the U.S. Capitol January 6th. Individual officers can get their own replica copies at a later date. But what stood out, to the surprise of many people in the room, if not everybody in the room, was how this ceremony was punctuated. When 4 members of the family of fallen Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick refused to shake hands with Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy and Republican Senate Leader Mitch McConnell. And they told us after why they chose to do so. Take a listen.
Whatever hold that Trump has on them, they've backstepped, they've danced. They won't admit to wrongdoing, not necessarily them themselves, but of Trump, of the rioters.
You don't think they deserved a handshake in this context?
No, definitely not. No, because unlike Liz Cheney, they have no idea what integrity is. They can't stand up for what's right and wrong. With them, it's party first.
Ed, reporters asked Senator McConnell for his reaction shortly after, and he didn't really directly respond to the question, just saying today it was important to honor the heroes of January 6th.
Well, indirect answers from Senator McConnell are nothing new. And I think one of the moments that I know stood out in this was when Washington's police chief described that day. I think we have that as well, and we should play it for people to appreciate the gravity of that day and the importance of today's ceremony.
The sound of metal poles and other objects striking the bodies, helmets, and shields may still ring loudly. The air, still thick with bear spray and other chemicals, making it difficult for our officers to see and breathe. The calls for your fellow officer to be harmed just as loud as the day that this occurred.
Important reminder there of what went down that day. Go ahead, Scott, quick.
The numbers here. 140 officers hurt, many others traumatized. There were suicides after January 6th. Chief Conte was speaking for those families and those officers.
Exactly. Yeah, Scott McFarland on Capitol Hill, we thank you, and we'll be in touch throughout this busy week. We're continuing our coverage of the January 6th criminal referrals by speaking next with a former senator and federal prosecutor who will help us break down those details. You're streaming Red and Blue.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely. As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, they are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
Every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
In today's Money Watch, business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help.
How do you even begin to make the best use of your money?
If you've got a match from your employer, don't give away that money.
Dollar Jill, y'all.
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe. As we've been reporting, the head of the January 6th Select Committee has said that the panel will be making criminal referrals to the Justice Department in the coming days. For more, Alabama's former Democratic senator, who is also a former federal prosecutor, Doug Jones, joins us now from his home turf of Birmingham, Alabama. Senator, great to see you, and happy holidays. Part of why I'm glad you're here today is because of your DOJ experience. And I was wondering, can you think of any other examples of Congress making criminal referrals, which are by their nature just advisory, and them carrying enough water with federal prosecutors that it becomes something that they ultimately pursue and turn into a case?
Well, Ed, I'm not sure that there has been anything like that. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if there would be enough referral, simply a referral, even coupled with evidence to carry the water from the DOJ. They need to make their own decision. They don't need to have anybody carry their water. They are fully capable, especially with a new special counsel who can really can persevere in something like this. I think DOJ is looking at this strong. They're going to take it into consideration for sure. There's no question about that. And I hope they couple the referral with the evidence that they've got. And DOJ is going to do their own thing. But I've told people a lot about this. Number one, DOJ doesn't have to follow. Number two, it's important to remember that the DOJ evidence for a potential trial is a lot different than what we've heard from this committee. So much of what we heard from the committee could never be used in a trial, but can form the basis of gathering information that ultimately could be in a trial.
I'm glad you said that, because the way that committee held its hearings, it was clearly designed to be a trial of public opinion, so to speak, not at all of a legal nature, because it would have been conducted far differently if it were a trial or designed to be some kind of event with legal standing. So you're right. This ultimately, then, what you're saying is it becomes supplemental material for the prosecutors.
Exactly. And I would disagree a little bit, Ed, in the sense that I don't think it was just for public opinion. I do think it was for history. I do think it was to make a strong record. But the biggest difference, the biggest difference is you have statements, recorded statements that were not subject to cross-examination. Those statements could never be introduced in and of themselves. Those witnesses would have to appear. That's the biggest difference, is the adversarial nature of what the Department of Justice would face if they seek indictments on any individuals responsible for the actions of January 6th.
Yes, and your point about it being for history is certainly well taken. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, seems to have become a bit more public in recent weeks, holding news conferences touting DOJ's wins. The department seems to be making a better effort at explaining itself. What do you make of the decision to do that, and why do you think he's doing it now?
Well, it's hard to say, but I think it's appropriate for them to do. I mean, the department has traditionally done things like that in the past. I think when the Attorney General came in, he came in with this idea, and he should have, by the way, of making sure the department is run in a professional way and that the public doesn't perceive it in any way to be a political arm of the administration. And to do that, I think you do have to maintain a little bit more quietness when it comes to the media. So I think this has been a measured response from the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. But I think going forward, you will see a little bit more activity because they do want to make sure that the public knows that they are doing the public's work. And it's not just about January 6th. It's not just about Mar-a-Lago. There are a lot of things going on within that department that this department has to be proud of.
Now to Georgia. Obviously, as a Democrat, you support Senator Raphael Warnock, the incumbent, in this runoff tonight. For folks not in Georgia, not being inundated with millions of dollars in TV and digital advertising, why does this seat matter so much to your party, especially if there isn't something beyond the obvious that it helps expand that majority?
Well, there's a couple of things about going forward. Number one, if you look beyond 2022 into 2024, Democrats are going to have a tough road in 2024. One extra seat means that's one more seat that we will be able to hold on to after the 2024 elections. And I think that is incredibly significant for Democrats going forward. In the short run, though, in the next 2 years, it means that Democrats will have full control of the Senate. You know, Ed, even in the last year or so, but even when I was in the Senate, in a closely divided Senate, you always hear times when Democrats or Republicans might want to boycott a committee hearing. Right now, if one side or the other boycotted a committee hearing, there would be no quorum, and so a committee could not do business. Now Democrats will be in full control if Senator Warnock wins, as I expect him to do that, which will give the Senate committee some more flexibility to do the work that they want to do without regard to whether or not they may get boycotted and not be able to have quorum going forward on the business that they want to do.
Yeah, so from a practical level, it makes it smoother, at least for Democrats, to get the personnel business done of the Senate.
Absolutely, there's no question. And think about this. Even if they want to do investigative work and issue subpoenas, right now with a 50-50 committee structure, it's hard to get subpoenas because only the majority subpoenas, but you got to take a vote and you got to have a majority of the people to do that. So as a practical matter, the Senate will run much smoother with a 51-49 majority.
We will wait and see. Former Senator Doug Jones, Democrat of Alabama, former federal prosecutor as well. Great to speak with you again. Good to see you. Have a great holiday season, and hopefully you'll be back soon.
You got it, Ed. Thank you.
All righty. Take care. That does it for today. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And a programming note, we'll have a special edition of Red and Blue tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern with the latest Georgia vote count from our CBS News data desk. You can stream that right here on CBS News.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
When folks on the right talk about socialism, it's a boogeyman. Socialists are always going to promise you free tuition, free healthcare, free everything, but they will never promise you freedom.
I think of socialism as government control.
Wealth is too concentrated at the top right now.
Providing for people the things that they need is actually the world that we were supposed to live in.
Socialism didn't work in Cuba, North Korea, the Soviet Union.
Capitalism is a